and this is like going to be just my biggest body of work, and I'm so excited to share that. And it's so interesting that like I want to say 10 years into my career that I'm experiencing new parts of the job, and that's really fun and like new for me. But yeah, I'm just really excited again to just be caught up to speed with everyone and be like, this is where I've been, this is what I've been doing. Like, I know it looks like I took time off, but I didn't. There's definitely a lot that I miss about Australia. Like, people are just so much nicer right off the get-go, and I do miss that. Like, I miss being able to like walk into a pharmacy and just like ask a pharmacist a question and them not like yell at me. And I get it because everyone here is really stressed, but you know, there's a certain ease and quality of life that I miss about Australia for sure. I had a lot of issues that I've been honest with my audience about, like just record deals, just the business side of this. So like had the pandemic not happened, had blah 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 not happened, we might be in a different situation. But like, this is where it's at now, and it takes time to like get that stuff in order, and especially after you've been burned a couple times contractually, you really want to make sure that stuff is good before you start releasing music again.
Like, honestly, we like do this weekly and make ongoing technical errors, so there's no shame.
Okay, I'm not going to be able to. It's 1 a.m. here. I'm not going to be able to.
I was going to ask that. What is it? Thank you for joining us at this time. But no, yeah, that's fine. I'll get it on our end, and okay. It's sounding fine already, so it should be okay.
Okay, great.
Well, we may as well start there. Wafia, very excited to have you joining us right now. This is one we've been trying to tee up back and forth for a little while. There's been a few complications throughout, both on our end and yours, but also you're overseas at the moment. Dialing in at 1 a.m. Just for reference, it's 6:04 p.m. Much more reasonable for me recording this. But first of all, tell us where you are and what you're doing there.
Oh my gosh, hi. I'm in LA, and I actually live here most of the year now. If I'm not playing shows or if I'm not visiting family, I live in LA because I make a majority of the music that I make here, as I always have. So the pandemic sort of forced me to choose where to live with Australia's borders shutting down, and it forced me to put some roots down here finally.
And how's that been? Were you previously living full time in Australia before that?
Yeah, I was pretty much living at my parents' house until the pandemic. Like, it was because I was touring so much pre-pandemic, it just kind of didn't make sense to get my own place and have it be empty half the year. Yeah, but I mean, I like LA. It's got its good things. It's taken a while for me to find my footing here and find people I like. There's definitely a lot that I miss about Australia. Like, people are just so much nicer right off the get-go, and I do miss that. Like, I miss being able to like walk into a pharmacy and just like ask a pharmacist a question and them not like yell at me. And I get it because everyone here is really stressed. There's a lot to be stressed about living in this country, but you know, there's a certain ease and quality of life that I miss about Australia for sure.
I've heard that before, but you never wonder how much it's being kind of pumped up by people. But is it really that stark in terms of just the interactions with strangers? And I also, off the back of that, you mentioned it. What is the mood like in America at the moment? Because it's a volatile place. My sister's living in San Diego, and where our family's like, can you come home like before November? Because it just feels like it's heating up. But again, I don't know how overblown that is looking at it from the other side of the world.
I think, yeah, definitely, especially around the Trump presidencies, it's been pretty volatile. Like in 2020, around the Black Lives Matter movement and Trump and all the crazy stuff he was pulling, it was really tense. Like there was like helicopters around and curfews implemented. And I mean, I imagine your sister is in Trump territory over there. San Diego can lean a little bit Republican. So, but like LA is its own little bubble, especially on the east side where I'm at. It's quite liberal and quite progressive. And so, you know, it's definitely a privilege to be insulated from the rest of the country.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned you've been over there since the start of the pandemic or thereabouts. How has, and we'll get into your music and not geopolitics, but how has it influenced your creative process, upending your life and moving over into a different country? Because what we're seeing now in 2024, we've got 3 tracks out from you so far, the first in a couple of years, and in that time there's clearly been a fair bit of change for you personally. So how was that move kind of translated into the music you're producing, or has it not had much of an impact?
Oh, it's had a massive impact. It's actually it's defined the project. The biggest themes are, and always have been, transition, change, and immigration. I feel like immigration is a rite of passage for me. It's like I'm doing what my parents did, you know. I think about my father is Iraqi, and our family were nomads, and I think about that a lot and how I'm just like recreating an innate pattern in me in a lot of ways, and that's actually a huge component of the music I've been making and the themes that are coming up.
Yeah, I think House Down references some of that journey in probably a lot more intimate and vulnerable way than maybe we've seen in some of your music in the past. And you said there before, you're of Syrian Iraqi heritage, if I'm not mistaken. Born in the Netherlands, lived in Australia for a bit, now you are in LA, so I can completely see how the nomadic thing resonates. But with that track in particular, House Down, it was the second single that we got from you this year, the second single during the return, I guess if you want to reference it that way. That track was softer, slower, more acoustic, and you dove into some very deep themes, particularly related to your father. And I suppose, not to assume too much, but the trauma and difficulty and the toll that takes, having to deal with that homelessness and that nomadic lifestyle early in life. So how has it been to go that deep in your music and lay it all out in that way, particularly at the moment?
I always find it to be quite freeing to be like up to speed with my audience. Like it always feels a little bit weird when I'm like going through something and the music I'm making is there, but like people that I'm sharing it with don't know about it yet. So yeah, it in some ways, like just the vulnerability almost, I just hate stuff that goes unspoken and including the stuff in my life. And it also just feels good to share it. Like estrangement is a taboo subject, and I have my reasons, and it's as is anyone struggling with family, you know, and it feels good to speak about it because then it opens up a dialogue with other people who are also going through it, which is, I think, the beauty of what I get to do. Like this is my favorite part of the job.
Yeah, in the post about House Down, you mentioned that particularly amongst Arab culture, talking about that estrangement or fighting back or resisting your parents is frowned upon. So obviously that was a difficult process, but I'm interested also, have you had a great response from the Arabic community that listen to your music, whether they're Arab Australian, because it's so intrinsically linked with culture?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I think, but also I do think like I can only speak to, that post was about my experience and my experience of the like obligation there can sometimes feel within like Arab communities to like care and tend for our parents as they get older, which, I wish I could do. I would love to like care for my father had he gone about certain things differently, but yeah, I do also think it, that the shame that comes with it really transcends cultures. It's, I don't think where you come from, like, we all celebrate Mother's Day and Father's Day, and those days can bring a lot of guilt and shame for a lot of people, because it highlights the absence or the omission.
Yeah, for sure. If we can talk about, can I characterize it as a return? I'm basing it off the kind of clean sweep socials. It's almost like this iteration of your project started this year, and what's behind that is kind of less relevant now. So could we talk about, if that's how you're framing it?
I'm not fussed.
So what's prompted this, I suppose, this iteration of your project and to kind of pivot somewhat in the way that you have? We have these 3 new tracks out now. The sound, it's still got that same kind of vocally beautiful and identifiable sound, but I guess that the produced, it's a lot sweeter, I guess was where I landed, sweeter sounding, which is, a compliment. But yeah, how has that pivot looked for you, and what prompted it?
I don't, it's just an extension of what I've been making. I don't know that if you compare it to the first stuff that I ever made, like the Heartburn and the EP that was on, that record was so dark. And I also think it was like of the time, and I don't know, I think my favorite stuff has transitioned into songs that can actually hold quite a lot of nuance, that they can be dark or have dark themes, but we can wrap it up in this bow or produce it interestingly where it creates a rub. And I think that is more, as I've gotten older, that's just more interesting to me to make. And then as for the return, it's I don't know that I had much of a choice in the situation. I had a lot of issues that I've been honest with my audience about, just record deals, just the business side of this. Had the pandemic not happened, had blah 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 not happened, we might be in a different situation. But this is where it's at now, and it takes time to get that stuff in order, and especially after you've been burned a couple times contractually, you really want to make sure that stuff is good before you start releasing music again.
Yeah. If you could, in a brief way, kind of run through what did occur in that period, if you are willing or able to talk about that.
An NDA was signed with whom I shall not say, and I can't say. And then, I think I was signed to some people at a major label, and I don't know, the major label system just didn't work for me. I don't know that I fit into that mold. It was fun to try, but I just don't think it felt great to me. And then the pandemic happened, and people all worried about about themselves, and the people that were responsible for my project honestly just dropped the ball. And that's, the closest to an explanation as I got.
And I can imagine then picking it up afterwards and starting again in one way or another, compared to kind of the trajectory you were on previously, that would have taken a fair amount of energy. After having it after having the ball dropped, did it take a fair amount of energy to kind of pick it back up and motivate yourself to get back into it?
No, not really. I mean, the music was always very consistent for me. Like I was always writing music, and it was just like the legality of everything. And as much as that's true for me, that also kind of is true to everyone I've spoken to in the music industry. Like whether if it wasn't the situation exactly that I was in, it was like, well, the pandemic stopped touring. The pandemic, it just sort of, I really do think it came for everyone, and I'm not like, woe is me about it, or did I have to like take any particular time off. It's just a recalibration. I think every artist sort of had to come out of that and be like, okay, one, am I still doing this? The landscape has changed dramatically. And two, who's left? Like lots of people left the music industry, whether it be on the A&R side or the publishing side or whatever. And I think, I think that's just true of everyone's experience, I think.
Yeah, well, we spoke about it like to no end during the pandemic as well, because what was so concerning was how many people, as you said, would be leaving the industry and not returning with all of their valuable skills. At least in the Australian context, there was a lot more support that could have been offered to prevent that. And I think the arts community is still reeling from that in one way or another several years on. In terms of the label and the industry side of things, I know... I think that you're friends with Yves Caridas, who kind of made this similar career shift, or just started calling out a lot of the parts of the industry that were tied to some of her deals and how she was promoted as not really feeling true to her. So do you think that this period through the pandemic has prompted more people like yourself or more people like Yves Caridas to reject the parts of that system that they didn't agree with, and now as Yves Caridas is, you're doing it from a more independent or with more agency over your art, perspective from there?
Right, yeah. I mean, firstly, love Yves, love Hannah, love her new album. And then I think it's also a time that like, one, we've traded like most gatekeepers for algorithms. Whether or not that's better or worse, we can get into it another time. But it means that we all have a lot more agency, and that we're also finding people online just want the truth. And that when you're faking it or putting on an act, it either your audience catches on or you catch on to yourself. And it's not a great outcome either way, I think.
No, not at all. It's I suppose silver linings. But if we can talk about back to your music, sorry, we keep pivoting all over the place. But from what you can tell us, we've got these 3 songs now, and based on how it's even being arranged on Spotify, it looks like it's forming into a body of work. So are you able to talk about what might be in the pipeline, or if that hunch is true, are we moving towards a body of work?
I would say yes. I think that's an astute observation. Yeah.
So we've got that coming up at some time in the future, and how and what is this going to mean to you as an artist?
I think there's going to be a lot of firsts for me as an artist. Like, I'm someone who's put out a lot of music over a long span of time, and this is like going to be just my biggest body of work, and I'm so excited to share that. And it's so interesting that like I want to say 10 years into my career that I'm experiencing new parts of the job, and that's really fun and like new for me. But yeah, I'm just really excited again to just be caught up to speed with everyone and be like, this is where I've been, this is what I've been doing. Like, I know it looks like I took time off, but I didn't. Like, I've been writing this whole time, I've been making this whole time. It didn't stop. Yeah,
because we speak to artists all the time, and obviously by the time you release a body of work or even a song, you know it intimately. And for some artists, they're almost over it. But from the outside, everyone's getting their hands on it for the first time and reveling in that excitement. So was there pressure for you in feeling that people are looking from the outside who aren't fully aware with what you're doing and going, oh, what's happening with Wafia? Like feeling like nothing's going on while you're in the background are working just as hard?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. But what's that Lil Wayne quote that's like, real G's move in silence like lasagna. Now, don't quote me on that. I think you can quote Lil Wayne. But I don't know. I try not to get too in my head about it because it's not really helpful to think that way. And it doesn't change me sitting there being like, well, people have this perception of me, and so I should, that I'm not doing anything, so I should prove them wrong. And it's like, okay, but I can't because legally I have to wrap X, Y, and Z up. It's not like I didn't want to, and so you do have to sort of, and in those periods, I have a hard time taking up space. So if I'm not releasing music, I have a hard time being like, hey, I still exist. And so I think that definitely contributes to people going, what is she up to? Where is she? Is she still here with us on this planet? And I'm okay with that. Like, I know that doesn't benefit the algorithm or benefit the audiences, but I think it's important to like regenerate and like be working on stuff and not have to like show your cards all the time, especially because when you are releasing music, you're being perceived a lot. And especially with our access to phones, like I'm being perceived more than I ever have around a release. So I don't know. It's like a nice thing to give myself is like to free myself of that.
Yeah, a break in between, because I mean the other thing that we know is that it's such hard work doing the promotion now, and I suppose with the 24-hour nature of all of our social cycles and wherever people get their information, it's almost like it is like a full-time job just to manage your own socials, especially for an artist like yourself. So I suppose it would feel better to have had that break and come back, and it always makes the return a whole lot sweeter.
Yeah, it also makes you like really appreciate the phases. I think like releasing music and being an artist used to be so cyclical. You do the tour, you make the album, you promote the album, you do the tour, and now it's like you do all of them all at the same time. And it's nice to like, in my little ways, find the cycle, because I do have a real reverence for the way it was done before.
On touring, is there anything? Is it far too early for us to be speculating on touring, or is there news to share on that front?
I can't share anything, but there shall be a return, as you've been calling it.
The return is nigh for Australian audiences, I imagine, as well. But I mean, global audiences too, hopefully, given your kind of global base at the moment, that would open doors in that regard. On your team now that you now have, post being burned by those who shall not be named, how has that been?
Yeah, I mean, well, my manager has always been my manager for 10 years now, and I'm really, really grateful for that. Like, he is my rock. I love the girls that I work with. Like, so it's really important to me that whatever team that I have fits in with them, because they've just been so consistent in my life. And so, yeah, the new label situation is like, it's also nice because it's like I own my work. And that is really... Yeah, and they have, for the most part, really stepped back and been like, hey, we trust you. When I was like freaking out about making this album, and I was like, oh, but maybe it needs this and maybe it needs that, they're like, what do you think? And they're like, don't worry. Like, you actually got this. They had signed me on the back of hearing none of the new stuff, maybe 2 demos, if that. And like, they sound very different to where it's all now. And I value and really appreciate that level of trust to the project, because there is such a thing as too many cooks in the kitchen, and like, my job is to just make, and you know, I can go to them for feedback when I want, but I do really appreciate that it's pretty much hands off.
Yeah, you're in control of the broth, not enough people there to spoil it.
Yeah.
I'm interested also in, given your kind of role within Australian music, you've been around for some time now, so you'd have distance and perspective. How do you perceive the scene in Australia right now? And maybe it's a bit harder given that you are based overseas, but you're still operating and being played a lot in Australia. How's your perception of how the scene has changed over the years you've been involved, particularly given there was a pandemic in the middle?
I don't know. It's hard to see the decline of the festivals. That is like Splendor in the Grass. I went to that when I was 17, and it's when I saw that announcement, I was like so gutted for them. And obviously, all these institutions come with their flaws, but it's just sad to see it all go, and to see it all go all at once. Particularly this year, as I understand it, it's just been a really bad year for festivals. Also, radio is different now for Australian music. So it's a little sad. There's something to mourn there, because I think the landscape was uniquely Australian, and it really, the language overseas is, a big part of it, I think, was in the circles that I was that like you could break an artist in Australia. You can break an international artist in Australia. Like, you would bring a UK act, get them played on Triple J, get them to do the festival runs. And it's like, it's sad that like that, I don't think it changes our reputation as tastemakers, but the infrastructure isn't there. And so I do think that that's something to grieve.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing that perspective, because often from one end you could look at it and say, oh, like they don't seem that keen on Australia because it's probably harder to travel to and tour to. But it is very interesting to hear that, no, it was actually seen as a place where you could break through and give an artist that kind of more mass appeal. Oh,
it's a massive, like, the language around Australia is just that, like, they are tastemakers, Triple J and the radio play in Australia does, and like a version and all that stuff holds a lot of cachet outside of Australia. So yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's just a blip, and
yes.
we're grateful and lucky to have musicians like yourself still producing. I suppose that's one of the things. The artists aren't going to stop making really, really good art. It's as you said, more an issue of infrastructure. We will let you go in just a second, Wafia, but can we preview perhaps in any way, and I understand if you can't, an upcoming single or time frame? What can fans out there expect if you're able to reveal that?
I have a new song coming out next week.
Beautiful.
I can say that. I haven't teased that anyway yet. Probably should.
Hello, everybody. It's Eamonn butting in again. 2 podcasts in a row. How lucky are you? Not really. No, I am butting in to say that the single Wafia references there has now actually been released. We thought we were going to release this podcast at a slightly different time when it was recorded. So that single is called Sad Shit. It's very, very good. Would encourage you to check it out. But hopefully that just makes a little bit more sense with the last bit, because to be honest, there was no way I could cut it out and have the end make any sense. So there you go. Anyway, enjoy this last 30 seconds. Bye. Well, based on our own release schedule, this will still probably be released in a week from recording. So it will be this week when you are listening to this. A new song coming out from Wafia. A body of work looming as far as we can see. And we do have 3 singles at time of recording already released: Crystal Ball, House Down, and Background. I would encourage everybody to go out and get acquainted with that, and expecting that it's going to follow in that trend. I think we're going to have a very, very strong piece of work whenever that does hit our ears.
Keep it vague. I like it.
Keep it vague. Yes, we got to dance around it. But thank you so much, Wafia, for dropping in a chat at 1 a.m. in LA. It's very much appreciated.
Anytime.
We'll let
Thank you so much for having me.
Get to bed, and we can't wait to see you back on Australian shores.
This episode of Homebrewed, the amazing episode that it was produced by my good friend Eamonn Snow. It was recorded on Darkinjung land. And for more from us, head to www.homebrewed.au.